join me on the sticks?
Yahweh, Yah, 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 oh, eh, Yahweh, Yah, 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 oh, eh, way, ah, hey, oh, Yahweh, Yah, Yah, Yahweh, Yah, oh, eh, oh, way, ah, hey, oh, Yahweh, Yah, Yahweh, Yah, oh, eh, oh, way, ah, hey, oh, way, ah, oh, way, ah.
I'm Jen Mason. I'm an Anishinaabe from Treaty 1 territory. I live in Winnipeg. My first symposium was about 5 years ago, and it's changed life. Wendy, it didn't matter where you encountered her or what was going on, Wendy would be your biggest fan. So that thing of knowing that there's strength in someone, knowing that potential, knowing that, and wanting to pass that on, she just inherently called it out in people. Without it being, like it wasn't an obvious thing. That was just how she related to people. But she was like, I see this gift, that is an amazing thing, and she just wanted to draw it out of people. And in such a genuine way. And that impacted me the most. She was, Jen, when are you going to NAIITS? It made me very uncomfortable. But she was sincere. I see what maybe you cannot see yet. And I want to be your biggest fan and cheer you on and see you get there.
Need to push up here. There we go. It has been a very rich day, very full, and I pray that you've had some really good conversations this afternoon and over dinner. There have been some questions about journals already, which I'm excited for. And so all the presentations that you hear will hopefully be in the journal that you can purchase next year or for next year if you want to pre-order them. We might be able to find a way to do that. So just to let you know that our intent is to have those in journal format, but they will also be available on video, like we have them recorded as well. This evening, it is my privilege to introduce our presenters this evening. Before I do that, I do want to recognize that they will be touching on topics that might stir within people some difficult feelings. They are going to talk about some sensitive material. And so I do want to prepare you for that. We do have some people, if something rises within you or that you want to talk about with somebody, if you have any responses emotionally, we do have some people that are willing to sit with you, some trained counselors. So I'm going to ask them right at the beginning if they would stand. Maybe wave your hand, because there are a few back there. So if you want to talk to any of them, you're more than welcome to. We will also offer ceremony this evening. We will offer smudging if anyone would like to close the evening. Just prayerfully smudging for themselves. We will have that available as well in the chapel area at the end of the evening so that you can process this in a good way. And so that will be available, and we do have some people for that. Our presentation this evening will be in person. Sherelle and Kharla. I don't know if they need any introduction to this community. They are known and well loved, but I will introduce them. But we also have Sharon and Rob, who will zoom in some fashion or another. Isn't it amazing what we can do with technology these days? when people are unable to be here in person. And so they will join us from Mindanao, the southern group of islands in the Philippines. And all of them are involved with iEmergence Philippines. How many have heard of iEmergence Philippines? Oh, there's actually some that have not. Matt is our director for iEmergence. Now, for iEmergence Philippines, I believe it's Kharla. And so you get to experience her and her leadership for that. Many people might know Matt LeBlanc. I don't know if you know Matt. He's hiding in the back and making sure we all sound good or look good. I don't know. He's a miracle worker for some of us, I'll just say. But iEmergence is a part of our Indigenous Pathways family. And we want to make sure we not only acknowledge them, but celebrate with them the incredible work that they are doing in North America and the Philippines. And so we're very thankful for those that are connected with iEmergence. Now, there are quite a few here that are connected with iEmergence, right? And so they can share their stories. And they are involved in iEmergence Philippines, and they will bring in their experience in history, arts, community development, and mentorship. Sherelle is also faculty with NAIITS and Indigenous Learning Community, and Kharla is the executive director of IE Philippines. And Sharon is a professor at the Mindanao State University. And so I'm going to invite Sherelle and Kharla to come up and share with us the voices of resilience and leadership as they share from Mindanao. Let's take water from you.
Good evening. We will be hearing from Sharon first.
Hello, good evening and good morning from the Philippines. Welcome everyone to the presentation on Guardians of the Spirit, Indigenous Women's Roles in Resilience and Community Building in Colonial Caraga. My name is Sharon of Shoma Bulaklak, and today I'll take you through how Indigenous women shape their communities in Caraga amidst colonization. This presentation is actually largely inspired from the work of Peter Shore's titled Caraga Antigua. This book traces the history of Caraga from early European contact up to the early 20th century. Actually, our focus today is to reread this history by highlighting the often overlooked contribution of Indigenous women. While Caraga Antigua from 1521 to 1910 primarily documents the colonial incursions and missionary activities in Mindanao, a closer reading reveals the silent yet enduring presence of Indigenous women as pivotal figures in the survival and resilience of Caraga's community. Through their voices, though their voices are not directly recorded, their agency and roles can be inferred through the essential contribution of cultural continuity and communal well-being. So to situate this study more broadly, across Philippine history, women have held vital roles as babaylan, healers, as spiritual leaders, and community weavers. Unfortunately, the colonization, particularly during the Spanish occupation, suppressed many of these roles, replacing them with patriarchal norms. So in Mindanao, the second largest island of the Philippines, particularly the Caraga region, Indigenous women remained cultural anchors despite evangelization, forced relocation, and missionary campaigns. Here, in this on this third slide, I mentioned here a particular name, the name of Magdalena Baluyot. So here, Magdalena Baluyot is actually from the Pitan. Is one of the few named indigenous women in the text. She actually supported a missionary in Butuan, and then likely here she supported a Jesuit missionary in Butuan, likely acting as a cultural mediator at an early bridge between her community and colonial missionaries. Her involvement may have been instrumental in creating spaces where indigenous practices and Christian teaching coexisted, exemplifying indigenous women's adaptive strategies in the face of colonial intrusion. So this actually reflects a broader pattern in which women played a vital roles in mediating encounters between their communities and the missionaries. Then on this next slide, we have women in reduction or reduction villages. Here in the Jesuit established villages, especially those, if you read the text in the chapters 9, 12, and 18, women were essential in maintaining households, kingship ties, and cultural practices. So these villages actually often designed to control and convert indigenous population, imposed new hierarchies, and disrupted traditional lifeways. Despite new colonial impositions, women in the community continued to practice and transmit indigenous traditions. Their labor and spiritual roles ensured continuity, forming a living bridge between the past and the present. And then on the next slide, we have resilience amid forced relocation. Here we mentioned Manobo villages. Manobo is one of the indigenous groups here in Mindanao. So forced relocations, like for this indigenous community, the Manobo, created actually immense hardships. These relocations fractured traditional lifeways, but women played critical roles in maintaining community cohesion through caregiving, storytelling, ritual practice, and informal education. So their strength and adaptability made them emotional and cultural anchors in times of upheaval, preserving essential knowledge for cultural survival. And then on the next slide, we have, I mentioned here, quiet resistance. Here, the Jesuits and the Recollets missions frequently faces resistance among indigenous communities, of which was shaped by women's quiet but powerful acts of resilience. Even when overt resistance was led basically mostly by men, indigenous women quietly resisted colonial pressures through non-compliance and the preservation of spiritual practices. So here they continued using the herbs that they used to use, and then praying to ancestral spirits and blending rituals with Catholic elements. So their roles as the kalag or soul of Caraga reflects their spiritual and cultural resilience. The use actually of the term as kalag, the Visayan root word for soul, or some books would translate it to spirit, is actually to describe the region's name Caraga, resonates with the idea that the people, especially women, embodied the soul of their communities. This symbolism underscores women's contributions to the spiritual and social vitality of Caraga, both in times of peace and upheaval. Then on the next slide, in the last part, as a conclusion, since we only have limited time, here, by reconstructing the narratives of indigenous women from Caraga, Antigua, we not only feel the silences left by colonial historiography, but also recognizes the foundational roles women played in sustaining culture, community, and spirit in Caraga. These matriarchs, though most of the time in historical texts and were unnamed and underrepresented in written records, were actually the weavers of kinship, the guardians of oral traditions, and the stewards of spiritual practices that actually ensured the survival of their communities amid colonial disruptions. Their legacy speaks directly, actually, to the symposium's theme, the voices of the matriarchs and women in community, as it invites us to really honor the resilience, the agency, and contributions of Indigenous women, both in historical and contemporary contexts. Their stories, reclaimed and reinterpreted, offer pathways of Indigenous resurgence and community healing today. So, thank you for listening, and I look forward to your reflections with the presentations. Daghang salamat.
Good evening. Before I pick up where Sharon left off, I would like to bring greetings from Mindanao and express our gratitude for being welcomed in the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, the Mississaugas, the Anishinaabes, and the Haudenosaunee, and all the other tribes and peoples who have come into this place in the spirit of friendship and respect. About 285 kilometers away from the center of Caraga, the location of Sharon's report, is the home of Luz and Eva. They live in the village called Gumitan in the shadow of the Makaayat mountain range in the heartland of Mindanao. And I will be sharing the story of this mother and daughter knowledge bearers not just in their community, but in other cultural communities as well. Okay. Okay. So, although the Matigsalogs are considered to be a sub-tribe of the Manobo tribe, there is enough difference that they are considered a distinct linguistic group. Population estimates has them at around 50,000, but I do believe that the more likely accurate count is close to 150,000. The name Matigsalog means river dwellers because their communities dot the banks of the 191 kilometer, 118 miles Salug, which literally means river, but it's now officially named Davao River, which flows from Bukidnon, considered to be the heartland of Mindanao. And along these banks live Luz and Eva. And I would like to introduce you to them. Okay. So I have known this mother and daughter duo for close to 30 years now. Eva was still a very young girl when I got to meet them. So Luz is a wife of a pastor and is also a pastor herself. She is a community health trainer and works in the prevention of domestic violence as well as giving support and assistance to victims in her community beyond the legal process. They are both community health trainers, again, not just in their community, but in other tribal communities as well. Now, their roles might sound generic, but you will see later on that they very much walk in these roles, very much grounded in their identity. And so my time with them has led me to have a deeper understanding of the Matigsalog feminine epistemology. For them, for these women, knowledge acquisition and transmission is a natural process of living out longitudinal and latitudinal relationships. These are relationships across time, space, forms, and dimensions. Anthropologists would call this high context communication. This is visually represented in the art of weaving. In the art of weaving, the underlaying strands are as important as the more prominent strands. And for Luz and Eva, it is intentionally giving space to less heard voices. The interpretive lens for them is integration, and I will talk more about this later. And new knowledge is sifted through the question, what is useful? What makes whole? Because knowledge bearing for them should be towards wholeness. So Luz and Eva credit this passion that they have for knowledge bearing to the matriarch in their family named Ligaya Angit Manayas. She is Luz's mother-in-law, but mother-in-law is actually not a strong concept in the Matigsalog culture. She is simply mother. And she is, of course, Eva's grandmother. So Ligaya Angit Manayas is a babaylan, and the English word or term birth attendant does not capture the breed of what a babaylan is. She is one of the most sought after and even revered during her time because she was famous for knowing when the time of birth was, sometimes before the mother even feels the signs of it. And so this is revered in the community more than a skill. It is considered a gift, and her assistance as the usherer of new life begins way before the birth and even way after, if it is necessary. She would prepare food and medicine, especially if there is some difficulty involved. And she also has the authority to speak in the couple or family's life, especially if there are some problems. And she was known to send errant husbands to her son, Luz's husband, who is a pastor. And so that was how Luz and Eva saw their matriarch integrate new knowledge in her role as a babaylan. And so for Luz, being a knowledge bearer is weaving tradition not as a passive embrace of what is new, but as a process of revealing motivations and even offering redemption if there is a willingness to accountability. So this is how she takes on new knowledge and new engagements with the outside. knowledge of, and the bearer of this new knowledge relate to them as a community. So, as a pastor and a pastor's wife, advocating and helping the women in critical situations in her community was a normal development. She did not find it strange that she was working in this official capacity in her village as a pastor's wife. She was able to integrate it because for her, Christian spirituality means living in community in a good way. And it also gave her an opportunity to set the path for more Indigenous women to excel and succeed even in the, despite the brokenness and the struggles and the oppression that these women normally are when she meets them. Knowledge bearing for her also means allowing them to break free from the other oppressive ways of knowing that may have been imposed on them from the outside or maybe even from the inside. For Eva, the daughter, a youth pastor, and a health trainer in training, for her, knowledge-bearing means advocating for and with the next generation. I see her becoming more secure in her identity and having the courage to explore new and venture into new paradigms. Although this was not a linear journey for her, she also went through intimidation, insecurities in her engagements with the outer world, whether it be in church or other communities. And I saw this in practice in her life, that fluency in interpreting acquired knowledge hinges on identity-grounded critical thinking skills. And for her, language reclamation is only the beginning. She is one of our effective mother tongue-based multilingual education program resource person. And as a youth pastor, she sees discipleship as a stewardship of relationships and not just a regurgitation of some outline that she has learned. And an example that I will be elucidating more in the paper is the understanding of Paul's admonition of Ephesians about redeeming time should not be an individualized exercise, but that of community. Okay? And she is really learning to simultaneously draw from the past, the present, and even the future through her aspirations. And so in conclusion, the integrative lens or the interpretive lens of critical integration is a more proactive way for them of engaging with the outside and even the changes that are happening in their communities. And the knowledge that, the pursuit of the knowledge that makes whole is resistance to oppression both from within and the outside. It is creating and strengthening positive core memories to provide tools for the succeeding generations, especially the women, as they face these challenges. It is building on strength while being fully cognizant of the brokenness around them. And so knowledge bearing is responsibly weaving and being woven into the tapestry of the community. I would like to end my presentation by sharing my own remembrance of Wendy. 10 years ago, exactly to this day, was my first NAIITS experience, and I was co-presenting with Matt at that time on the topic of reconciliation. It was a very heavy presentation for us because it was on something a conflict that was currently going on in the community involving the most vulnerable that we were working with. And I remember Wendy pulling me aside after the presentation and said, "You do know that you need to take care of yourself as well because they will be drawing strength from you." And I have never forgotten those words from Wendy, and it had helped me a lot, especially going back to the communities when we had to face the conflict again until its resolution. And it feels a bit different to be here to share about women from a place of strength. And so now Kharla will share to us about faith leaders and their peace advocacies. Thank you.
Maupiam marusilom kantolangon, madayaw. Good evening, everyone. The symposium theme has a deep personal meaning for me. I'd like to caution everyone here that this presentation may contain some uncomfortable and sensitive language. And if you are a trauma survivor and encounter sensitive content in this presentation that is triggering for you, and find it difficult to concentrate, I encourage you to take the necessary steps for your emotional safety. I will be presenting the Women of Faith as Pillars of Peace, Leadership and Healing in Mindanaoan Communities, which explores the leadership journeys of women from diverse faith backgrounds, emphasizing their ability to promote healing, peace building, and community transformation in the face of violence and loss. This topic delves into their individual and collective processes of healing from violence and tragedies, as well as the enduring effects of these experiences. Highlighting their resilience and agency, the presentation explores how their religious beliefs empower them to confront challenges and assert themselves as leaders within their diverse community. These stories offer insight into the intersection of faith, healing, and leadership, showcasing how women of faith contribute to peace building and community transformation in the Mindanaoan context. The stories of faith reinforce the resilience and power to lead through a lens of peace and security. These women are more than just a case study for me. I work with them and can proudly say that I have strong, personal, meaningful relationship with them. I'll share the case study questions I prepared for them, which began with what brings them joy right now. Then came more personal journey. Can they take me back to where they managed to triumph gracefully in the face of adversity or the most intolerable experience they had, so on and so forth. I tried to explain where the peace and security lens comes from. Some of you here may have a better understanding of women, peace, and security, but please allow me to share with you the collective effort made by women around the globe, including where I am local. On October 31, 2000, the United Nations Security Council adopted Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. The resolution reaffirms women's critical role in conflict prevention and resolution, peace negotiation, peace building, peacekeeping, humanitarian response, and post-conflict reconstruction to maintain and promote peace and security. Resolution 1325 calls on all actors to expand women's engagement and include gender consideration in all UN peacekeeping and security initiatives. It also urges all warring parties to take extra precautions to safeguard women and girls from gender-based violence, notably rape and other kinds of sexual abuse during armed conflict. This particular component is equivalent to other key components indicated to the resolution. WPS, or Women, Peace, and Security, is an established concept in the field of peace studies and international relations. It is important to acknowledge that the WPS agenda of today is the product of more than a century of international women's peace activism. A global women's society movement for peace first emerged in the protest of the widespread devastation of World War I and evolved out of several decades of small-scale organizing on local and national levels. Religion will be a challenging subject, but it is a subject that, when engaged in a sensitive manner, might have potential to advance WPS agenda in specific contexts. Faith-based organizations, or FBOs, may have an advantage when talking about the intersection of WPS and religion. FBO can typically act from a religious vision and understanding of the world, which connects better with local stakeholders because this enables a perception of more legitimacy and better understanding. This year, WPS celebrated its 25th anniversary since its inception. The Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security did a summing up on lessons learned from 25 years of WPS. According to the report, women have made significant progress in the last 20 years in bringing their voices to formerly marginalized fields. They also discussed practical steps that the global community can take to fulfill UNSCR's 1325's commitment. So that's the 81 countries that adopted a national action plan in support of the UNSCR Resolution 1325. So that's the global context of WPS. So how does WPS appear in the Philippines? In 2010, the Philippine government crafted its first national action plan on WPS in cooperation with civil society. This action plan was updated to harmonize with the Magna Carta of Women and to address emerging issues. The Philippine NAP-WPS is a step forward for its predecessor. It adopted a framework that recognizes women's contribution to conflict transformation and addresses their intersecting vulnerabilities in armed conflict. UNSCR and 1820, the Magna Carta of Women, and the Joint Memorandum Circular 2014 between the Philippine Commission on Women and the Joint Memorandum and Office of the Presidential Advisor of Peace Security are some of the policy documents that supplements this one. So those are the governmental approaches. Now, where is the Philippine churches, believers navigates on the concept of WPS? An interfaith forum on WPS was held last October by Religions for Peace Philippines in partnership with the Philippine Center for Islam, the BYW International Center for Law and Religion Studies, and Uni Harmony Partners Manila. The forum is a simultaneous gathering of the religious community for the International Conference on WPS. The forum focused on the question, how can we increase women's participation in peace processes? What strategies can the interfaith community and relevant stakeholders adopt to ensure women are actively involved in promoting and sustaining security? Attorney Salma Rasul, Program Director of the Peace as Philippine Center for Islam, conveyed a clear closing message at the forum, highlighting that religious and political institutions must ensure women's participation in leadership to offer unique insights into societal challenges, especially those affecting vulnerable women and children. So how does WPS look like in Mindanao? An article was published in ASEAN's Women, Peace and Security in this year, last January. It highlighted the contributions of civil society and faith-based organizations. There are collective efforts by faith-based organizations in Mindanao that highlights or give focus on WPS. So what does the local or regional WPS look like? The plan's localization was initiated by the national government with the former autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao serving as the pilot region. And Bangsamoro, autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao or BARM, is still a predominantly patriarchal society, neglects the potential role of women to lead in securing their communities. The regional WPS framed to enhance the role of Bangsamoro women in the implementation of the peace agreement and establish 4 pillars that will work in an environment where women's compelling power is enabled and that there is a higher chance that peace will be sustainable and agreements will be implemented. So why do I have to present these binding laws and action plans, and why has BARM given focus on WPS? Because of Mindanao's past, the BARM region has a long history of conflict, and women have played a prominent role in this conflict. WPS also seeks to empower women while protecting them from the effects of conflict and violence. In most conflicts, women have found access to formal negotiations difficult because negotiations are mainly about ending war. Thus, only war actors are required at the table. No woman have ever sat at the table since formal peace negotiation on the Bangsamoro question started. It was not until 1997. So I am sharing to you the reality context of women, peace and security, and where I am local. According to the Philippine Statistics Authority, the island registered a total population of 24 million plus as of the 2015 census of population. Roman Catholic and Islam are the 2 religions most widely spread across Mindanao. These 2 denominations together cover the religious affiliations of more than half of the island's population. Mindanao is the 2nd largest island and is seen by many Filipinos as a frontier, a dangerous place, but also a land of promise. It evokes contrasting images of bounty and want, of war and peace, of rapid development amid the increasing impoverishment of its people. Colonial rule started a process that was to alter Mindanao's demographic composition. It deprived the indigenous inhabitants of the island and spawned deep-seated prejudices among different ethno-linguistic groups. In the early 1970s, the Bangsamoro people are united in a struggle for self-determination, which has invariably, although erroneously, been referred as a Muslim-Christian conflict. There are at least 13 ethno-linguistic indigenous to Mindanao that have adopted Islam as a way of life. The case of indigenous people in Mindanao demonstrate the systematic and structural challenges of indigenous people. The constant displacement caused by armed violence has greatly affected their holistic welfare. It is thus necessary to overcome these obstacles and support the peace and development of the indigenous peoples. For both Moro and non-Moro indigenous peoples, displacement, food insecurity, conflict, tribal war, and the geographical isolation of minorities, combined with the high incidence of poverty, constrains the equality of education, the children and youth. With displacement, school disruptions, and an insecure environment, the impact on education is even worse. And all of this situation disrupting impacts the lives and ways of living of a healthy community, and it directly affects the mothers, women, and children. Mindanao remains locked in a world where alliances between criminal and extremist groups have not been destroyed, where new internal and cross-border alliances between extremist groups are increasing, and where transition-induced violence continues to grow. All of them represent the realities of our multicultural society, and the chilling impact of war and insecurity is evident even outside of the legally binding documents that affirms the importance of women's roles. Because up until now, we still continue to live in insecurities. You can see a graphic of an alleged terror-related attacks in Mindanao from January to September 2019. I believe you are now ready to journey on with these remarkable female leaders as they navigate the inequalities and atrocities despite the existence of legally binding laws that are supposed to protect women. The first story I would like to share with you is the story of Haj Mariam Kanda. It was at a symposium on dealing with the past which affected generational trauma that I first met Haj Mariam. Our conversation turned to her experiences under martial law. I also mentioned to her that my grandfather was killed in front of my mother's entire family and that my mother was 13 years old when it happened. My grandfather was killed on April 24, 1974, while Haj Mariam's father was killed on September 24, 1974. So 1974, the year of horror, became our common ground. Haj Mariam is a cheerful plantita. Plantita, a created term coined during the pandemic, when practically every Filipino home enjoys caring for different types of plants, as well as plant trading. She too is a cat lover. She loves her children and grandchildren, and she gives back to her community as political advisor, which makes her happy and strengthens her relationship with Allah. In the coastal village of Malisbong in Palimbang, Sultan Kudarat, on September 24, 1974, 1,000 Moro men were killed inside a mosque. At the same time, 3,000 plus women and children were forcibly abducted in groups and taken to naval boats anchored offshore, where they were held captive. Units from the Philippine Army also set hundreds of houses on fire. Before the tragic day, Haj Mariam was 14 years old and had just married her equally young husband. A booming explosion on the shores of their town, Palimbang, woke them up at the break of dawn. Everybody in the villages of Malisbong and Baliango, as well as those in the interior, fled in the direction of the mountains. The military operation turned the entire town into a no-man's land. After negotiating with the military, the two town councilors invited the residents to come out of hiding. Haj Mariam and the other people of Palimbang came down from the mountain, bringing white cloth and tandong on the assurance of the two negotiators that nothing untoward would happen, but contrary events took place. In the Takbil Masjid, the government soldiers waited. Men were separated from the women and children. Haj Mariam found it difficult to leave her husband, but the soldiers were not convinced that they were married. They were told to kiss each other before he was led to the mosque, along with her father and cousins. Some people were told to dig their own graves. Many children died. They were simply dumped into the ocean. Even women who had been raped by soldiers were dumped into the sea. Haj Mariam chose to look after a baby and let herself be urinated on. She used the smell as a protection, hoping to make herself smell like a baby's urine to keep the soldiers away. but they didn't believe her. A day later, one woman who was going to be taken by the military attempted to stab the soldier with scissors when they were to disembark from the Navy boat. She was killed in front of everyone. Days later, they learned that all the other men were dead from a male relative who managed to flee from the soldiers guarding the mosque. Among them was her father, who was the Malisbong village captain at that time. The soldiers were looking for members of the Moro National Liberation Front, but all of those were killed were civilians. Then eventually her mother was able to negotiate with the mayor to get Hajj out of the village. She rode a pump boat from central of Palimbang to Cotabato City for 6 hours. There she took refuge with the Department of Social Welfare and Development. She lost her parents and her dreams to become a doctor, as the pain left by death of her father was too much to bear. It pushed her to join the Moro National Liberation Front as Mujahidat, female Mujahideen, where she led other women in the resistance against government forces. It encouraged by her brother, she continued with her studies. However, while she graduated with a degree in nursing, she could not find any peace inside her. She really tried to survive and live her life. Even joining the Moro Revolution, while she finished with degrees, she has never recovered from pain. Upon graduation, she decided to work abroad, but returned several years after and back to the resistance movement as a medic and trained young girls on how to use gun and defend themselves. Eventually, he found herself in politics. It helped working with others, she said, but she was looking for justice. She was also actively working for reparation for the survivors of Malisbong massacre. Mariam said that by going into peace and development work, she found healing. Being able to tell her stories of hope also made a difference for her and the other women in the community. In 2018, the Human Rights Victims Claims Board handed out reparation to victims of the late dictator Ferdinand Marcos. Out of 1,470 approved claimants for the reparation, only 33 claimants came from Malisbong. Those who were denied from the process said the requirements set by the claims board were too rigid and difficult for ordinary people to comply. Haj Mariam was one of those people that did not receive compensation, even after more than 4 decades since the massacre. Haj Mariam said that she remembers the events that befell her, her family, her town. Her strong faith has provided her solace and safety, that she is thankful that she wakes up every day during the tragic events because it gives her sense that she have works to do, that justice should be given to them. She said despite everything she have been through, she constantly thankful for the grace that have been given to her. She can say that her life is secure and simply continue living and cultivating deep relationship with Allah. It brings her great pride as a Muslim woman to be involved in crafting legislation that safeguards or ensures women of a life of security. Apo Ara, she's an Indigenous Christian leader from Ata community. I got to know her when I started working with iEmergence, and every time we meet in the city during my first year, she would ask me, "Why are you wearing shorts?" I'll quip, "This is my ancestral land." So I tell her that city is my ancestral home and our own rules. Although this is not a thing that I can bring up with community leaders or anybody else right away. I asked Lola Ara the same question I asked the other respondents, and without a doubt, she responded that her family, her children, grandchildren, and grandchildren's children is the source of her happiness. She also enjoys having conversation with the faith community and how to best support its growth. Her grandchildren's achievement brings her both joy and pride. She took me back to when she was young and got married. According to Lola Ara, her marriage marked her leadership journey. The title pastor or pastor's wife was a natural fit for her because the man she married was a pastor. Despite not attending a pastor's school, she appeared to be extremely ashamed if she did not carry out the duties associated with her title. Her husband, on the other hand, attended Bible school. Therefore, calling her a pastor felt okay with her. Her husband witnessed some concerning issues as they led and formed a Christian community in Tapak, Paquibato district in Davao City. Such is how the government mistreated and neglected the community while martial law was in effect. Their crops were barely sufficient for their needs and were in short supply since the rebels or military would demand or cease when they passed. Some indigenous leaders witnessed the military mistreating them, so they joined other armed forces. While her husband asked about the movement or what is happening in their community, the day came when he instructed her to pack everything because they were leaving. There was nothing she can or could do but to follow her husband. That time, they had 2 children. They were one of roughly 30 families walking through the most isolated parts of the mountains. They camped on the far end of Tapak with their children, livestock, cooking supplies, and clothing. Lola Ara couldn't take it any longer and questioned her husband on why they have to leave their village and why there were gatherings preparing for tribal war at that moment. Lola Ara had no idea that her husband had rebelled. She was responsible for ensuring there was food for everyone in the camp. To avoid being discovered by the troops' helicopters that circled to capture them, Lola Ara and a few women had perfected the art of smokeless cooking and knew when to make food. Meanwhile, their husbands were planning for confrontation with the military. If they noticed that their location was being threatened, they would move farther away to safer and more secure area in the mountain. When they traveled through a community, they would get livestock or root crops to help them in their resistance against the government and other armed groups. In their struggle against the government for basic needs and human rights, Lola Ara saw that what they were doing was significant for the development and well-being of their community. So she did not leave her husband. And despite the fear, uncertainty, and insecurity, Lola encouraged the wives of her husband's colleagues to believe in the cause they were working for and support their husband to gain strength in continuing the struggle, accompanied by prayer and firm faith that all the difficulties they were going through had the grace to be accepted. They may not be the ones to enjoy it, but their next generation may benefit from all the success. So every night, Lola Ara leads a meeting of women so that they can pray and thank God for giving them strength in the daily difficulties they face. Pray to ask for protection in their daily struggles and pray for guidance, for good thoughts, so that their husbands can make good decisions. After several years of fighting the government, her husband became ill and the government was ready to negotiate with them. It was agreed that they would be given a school, hospital, doctor, and nurse, that the military would cease harassing them, and that their traditional systems of government, reconciliation, and community development would be honored. Lola Ara also expressed how pleased she is that a medical facility and school have been built and that they will no longer have to live in constant fear of the military. It may not be perfect today. Nonetheless, Lola Ara believed that there is a big opportunity for progress if the same forces are willing to engage and listen, as well as realize the tribe has a good and sustainable means to develop its community. This is not only about the government, she said. It also encompasses the church and political concerns, since if the leaders of significant institutions do not listen to the people, the uprising and insecurity will continue. She said that she's always ready to help her grandson, who is currently the deputy mayor of their tribe. She is ready to help the church if the leaders are willing to listen, and always ministering to the community's development, giving gratitude to the Lord, and continuing to care for all His creations. Everyone, meet Pastor Aprilin. I was attending a conference called Many Faces of Christ in the Philippines when I first met Pastora Aprilin. The conference was held at the United Church of Christ in the Philippines, but she already knew me because I was also involved in Peace Youth Movement when I was younger. In the early 2000s, she also participated actively in the activities of a progressive women's organization. Despite being in the same circle, we were never able to work together. I met her and learned her work for Indigenous people when I started working with iEmergence in 2014. Right now, her joy stems from her family, friends who support her advocacy, working as a public school teacher, her mission work with young Indigenous people, and her relationship with God. She grew up in a caring, supportive, and prayerful family. Her father was an elder of the church and who was deeply committed to serving the church. She had a close bond with her siblings and the children who lived with them after their parents adopted them from the streets. There was a loving family, a content family. Pastora Aprilin grew up with a lot of faith in the church people. When she was a young woman, she was active in the youth ministry, and her active participation in church activities led her to be sexually abused by a church leader. She was ashamed of herself because she felt she was the one who caused what happened to her. She blamed herself. She pleaded with her family to allow her to move to the city and find work to finish her studies. She did not tell her family why she was moving away because she feared her father would be furious. So she went without receiving justice for what happened to her. Pastor Aprilin worked as a housekeeper in the city and was harmed by her former employer. Her experiences of abuse became more frequent when she changed employment. She believed that nothing had changed and that she was still sexually abused. So there were days she was thinking of becoming a sex worker. Her life changed when she met someone who urged her to join a church. She became actively involved in the women's movement at the church after that. However, when she learned that her organization, had rescued a sexually abused children, everything flashed back to what had happened to her. The injustices that she endured and continuously witnessed inspired her to join the resistance movement so she could help end and prosecute the abusers. Months of preparation for her to leave to join the resistance force. She prayed every day. She prays that all abusers will pay and she will be the one to demand justice. The church helped her to look into different lenses that justice may be served in various legal ways. Then she tries to move on. But there's always abuse happening. So she finds comfort in the promises made the former president of the Philippines, who was known as the Punisher because of his alleged merciless approach to crimes. Every day, as she prepared to join the armed group, she prayed for strength and the ability to think clearly, to make wise decisions. She eventually returned to school and enrolled in a course to become a teacher. She finished her studies and became a passionate educator of Indigenous children. Despite not receiving justice from those who mistreated her, she became an advocate for children who were abandoned by their families, did not have parents, sexually abused children, or were married too young. Despite the horrible events that have happened to her, her heart is always open to assisting children who lack a safe place to live. She now has foster care for 18 children. and 3 of these children was sexually abused by their family members, all of whom attend school despite the lack of funding. To make life better for these kids, she always turns to the ever-present divine providence to be with them. Pastor Aprilyn believes that if no one supports the children, they will wander on the streets, possibly getting abused, and grow up without having the opportunity to live a good life. The unfairness she has experienced, Pastor reflected that if no one steps into support her, she may take the burden of justice into her own hands and lose herself of a decent life. That is why Pastor Aprilyn is grateful that there are people who have helped her on her path to doing good. Right now, she can affirm that no child should be harmed in a church, on the streets, at work, at home, or anywhere else. She also believes that living safely is always met with challenges. If education is inconsistent, the laws will remain unclear, especially in spaces where there is no opportunity for learning, and the space for dealing or addressing inappropriate conduct is shrinking. It is a collective effort to provide a secure environment, she said. We must not deny others God's goodness. We cannot be in a better situation. We have safe homes and workspaces, but children are unsafe every day. Ensuring everyone's safety will take time and effort. So where does the collective strength of these women's stories I share come from? The core elements of facing atrocities and winning from the injustices they have experienced are the following themes. These women have culturally based leadership. Each of them has a commitment based on faith to overcome the injustices, the importance of cultivating good relationships. They are also courageous in offering spaces for peace building and peacekeeping, despite being denied those spaces. These women view all of these things as grace amid chaos. So I am inviting everyone to partake in this call to action. Let us work together to foster positive relationship and acknowledge that Genesis 1:26-28 revealed that God created both men and women in His image and likeness, and that we have a shared responsibility to care for all creation. Let us work together to create more secure and safe environments for children and women to build a healthy community. As Audre Lorde famously said, no one is safe until all are safe. I encourage everyone to come together to look at what women are capable of outside the domestic environment. Let's champion one another and acknowledge women as co-workers in creating a just and regenerative community in the future. No woman should ever feel insecure in any aspect of her life. Remember Psalm 64:5, God is within her, she will not fall. In the wise words of Eduardo Galeano, utopia is on the horizon. I move 2 steps closer, it moves 2 steps farther away. I walk another 10 steps, and the horizon runs 10 steps farther away. As much as I may walk, I'll never reach it. So what is the point of utopia? The point is this, to keep walking. So let's continue walking, be an ally, and let us make meaning together toward a better and sustainable future. Walk with us.
Former art educator in Davao City, Philippines. I hope that my colleagues Sharon, Kharla, and Sherelle sparked your interest to art culture and heritage, as well as got inspired by the women they have featured who safeguards and continued their community's tradition and advocacies. As I read through and learn more of their research, it inspired me also to revisit my own artwork series that I feel visually can reflect and showcase their works into 3-dimensional art pieces. Thus, I present the Triunity sculpture, a generational representation of women building communities, culture, and heritage. By definition, when we talk about triunity, it is a state of being in three, but one as a whole. In Christianity, it is close to the word Trinity and associated to the God the Father, God the Son, and God as the Holy Spirit. In old folkloric tradition, womanhood, there also is a tying concept of triunity that plays on the visuality of maiden, mother, and elderly woman. The depiction also of three women in art is a powerful and recurring motif in art history, often loaded with symbolic, mythological, or thematic meaning. The meaning depends heavily on the context of era and cultural lens of the artist, but here are the most common interpretation across time. The first concept is the concept of the three graces or charities that came from the ancient Greek and Roman mythology. They are Aglaia, also known as beauty, Euphrosyne, also known as joy, and Thalia, also known as charm. They actually symbolize grace, beauty, and fertility, and often associated with Aphrodite or Venus. In iconography, they are typically shown nude or semi-nude, standing together, often holding hands. As depicted on this painting by Sandro Botticelli, you will be able to see these three graces. They actually mean celebration of feminine ideal, harmony, and gift-giving nature of life, love, and arts. Also, in the Greek and Roman mythology, we have the Fates. They are Clotho, the one that spins the thread of life, Lachesis, that measures the thread, and Atropos, the one that cuts the thread. Usually, these women are depicted as mixed ages. So there would be a young woman, a mother, and an old woman. They actually represent life, destiny, and the inevitability of death. In artworks, they represent cycles of existence and the limits of human control. We need to know also that the triptych archetype and symbolism also means, in the pagan context, of the maiden, mother, and crone, representing youth, motherhood, and age. In the psychology archetypes, the triplet form often reflects the wholeness, balance, and life stages. In a contemporary feminist interpretation, they actually represent also the three generations of women, the grandmother, mother, and daughter. It could also be an aspect of identity, the public self, the private self, and the shadow self. It also is a solidarity and sisterhood, and a shared trauma or resilience. In modern artists often use three women also to depict unity or diversity in womanhood. They are also a critic or reclaim historical representation of the female body, as well as explore race, class, age, or sexuality in layered ways. Women in art can be interpreted into beauty, grace, and destiny in the mythological realm, while the symbolic will depict it under life stages, unity, and balance. In a feminist modern interpretation, it could be solidarity, identity, or a critic of tradition, and in psychological aspect, it is a wholeness archetype and transformation. If we're going to apply in visual thinking, they actually apply rules of odd. The rules of odd actually, when applied to an artwork, adds a layer of visual balance, narrative, power, and symbolic meaning. So what is the rule of odds? The rule of odds suggests that an odd number of subjects in a composition, especially 3, 5, or 7, is more visually engaging and emotionally dynamic than an even number. Why? Because odd numbers avoid symmetry that can be too rigid or static. 3 subjects naturally create a focal point, a sense of movement or dialogue, a triangular composition, one of the strongest and most stable visual structures as well. Applying this to our triunity sculpture, the concept of triangular composition and balance, the 3 women often form a visual triangle guiding the eye smoothly across the artwork space. This allows me as the artist to create a visual tension between figures, emphasize relationships among them, and suggest hierarchy or equality depending on the pose and placement. The rule of law invites viewers to interpret the relationship or contrast among the figures, especially in a circular narrative that represents the cyclic roles of the maiden, mother, crone, or past, present, and future. In summary, what it might mean in a painting of three women, it could be emotional, psychological complexity between individuals. It could be a symbolic representation or life stages, virtues, and fates. A visual strategy to keep the viewer engaged and subtly guide the interpretation. An exploration of identity, relationship, and unity through contrast. For my work, the visual inspiration of the Open-Close series will be applied to the Tri-Unity. The Open-Close series was first done in June 2021, where I made use of a ready-made bird cage that I incorporated air dry clay and found objects to depict certain meanings to the work. The first iteration of the Open-Close series is more of a black and white representation of things that can be an open system or a trap for people based on their emotions and mindset. While the Tri-Unity sculpture, I feel like I would want a more positive meaning to the open and closed concept, meaning that not all closed things are traps or seclusion, but a closed door cage can also mean inner passion, safeguarding oneself, or protection. Tri-Unity will be the working concept of the sculpture. The materials that I'm going to use are epoxy clay as the main medium for sculpture, and ready-made flores and foliage, small bird cage that represents the inner being of the character, small stones and pebbles for the aesthetics, as well as the tie wire for the armature. The Tri-Unity will definitely represent the life cycle of a woman, and each stage marks with all the elements of flores and foliage and symbolical elements that marks the meaning of each stage that they represent. The first stage that I'm going to depict is the girl. The girl represents the potential that one carries and uses the symbol of the moon and stars created inside the cage and blended with the foliage and florals, as you can see with the sketch. The crown flowers represents the wellspring of talents that one is bestowed with, but it's up for the person to decide to develop in time. If the work is presented with a closed door cage, the girl has not yet opened up herself, but brewing her talent from within. If the work is presented with an open door cage, the girl showcases her potential and talent to her community and the world. The maiden, on the other hand, represented usually by a pregnant woman to indicate womanhood, but I would want to present a more contemporary sensibility and putting emphasis that the woman's stature based on her passion and direction in life, may it be a fulfilling singlehood or motherhood. The image of this piece will have women with flowing hair, with flowers floating on it, to indicate her talents being shared to the community. Inside the cage is a burning heart that represents her passion and drive. If the artwork is presented with a closed door cage, it represents her inner light showing through the open crevices of the cage that guides and inspires others. If the artwork is presented with an open door cage, she represents her passion at its fullest, igniting others' passions as well. The elderly woman will be heavily decorated, and I feel that she will actually be representing the wisdom and the keeper of her own culture and heritage. The artwork is presented with a closed door. It represents her as a guardian of her heritage and culture. If the artwork is presented with an open door cage, it represents her sharing her heritage and culture to the others. In this one, I will be using the actual items that you could see, an earring of a design done in one of our local heritage and culture here in the Philippines, as well as an orchid, because Mindanao, we have actually lots of orchids here. Now, if you decide to get this artwork, the work will actually be done between the months of June to July 2025, with a work of progress being reported to the buyer of this work. The work will be boxed and safely be delivered upon completion, and a certificate of authenticity will be created by the artist and will be sent together with the artwork. I hope you enjoyed my presentation and learned something about the Triunity, and I hope you get excited as well with this work because I am. Thank you very much and good evening.
Other side. I'll get you two to come join us. I would like us all just to stand for a moment and to have a moment of silence, just to reflect. Sherelle, Kharla, come here. Sharon and Rob, you have made our hearts rich this evening. I know that you shared some very difficult things, and you have touched us deeply and have made yourselves very vulnerable in sharing this. And we stand with you. We are so thankful that you are a part of this community. And as I heard you share and walk through this, I also saw your asset-based appreciative inquiry and community development come through. These two model it so well in their entire being. It is immersed in you that as you walk in community, as you share with others, you use that asset base. It is so much a part of you. It's evident in this. And we are thankful that you are part of this community and you bring that strength with you. You bring that wisdom and that knowledge and insight, and you are a depth of wealth of information. But more than that, you have a depth of heart and passion and caring. And that was evident this evening. We are truly blessed once again to hear from you. And we thank you for this. Thank you. I'm going to invite you to have a seat. Sharon and Rob, our hearts we extend to you. Many hugs and great gratitude. Thank you.
All right. Part of being a woman, and specifically an Indigenous woman, means that we carry grief and joy side by side. And if you've been in community with Indigenous women for a hot minute, you know that The tears are one moment and laughter is the next. And it's because that's what heals us. And that's what calls us back to ourselves and back to ourselves in community well. And so honoring our sisters for being vulnerable and brave and so wise and intelligent. We hold the grief, and also to exhale and to laugh and to draw in more wisdom. We're inviting our aunties up. And just a disclaimer, none of us are responsible for what's about to happen on this platform. But we sure do love these women and we honor them. And so aunties, come on down. Are we moving this other way? Maybe together.
To community, their centrality to community. And we've been talking about that for a very long time behind the scenes, but this year's theme is right out front, recognizing how critically important the women in the NAIITS community and in the larger communities that we impact has been. And for me, we can't talk about NAIITS, we can't talk about the importance of NAIITS, the value of NAIITS, the rise of NAIITS, its significance, without talking about the single most important matriarch in the NAIITS community, our Wendy Peterson, my big sister. Wendy's contributions, not just to the thinking about NAIITS when we first launched the ideas of NAIITS, but her contributions to the shaping of the journal and the telling of the stories that each year emerged at the symposiums that people like you brought here from their research, from their reflections, from their experiences in the Indigenous world. Wendy curated those. Wendy brought those things together in a readable format, in a journal that eventually became the single most important journal on Indigenous theology and mission, published annually, published regularly around the globe. Wendy was and still is, as she hovers over us, having passed on from this life to the next, the matriarch of the NAIITS community. It isn't that those other women in this community, Sherry and Cheryl and others like Nicole today and Jen, weren't contributing to the community, but Wendy was the matriarch. She was the one that you could look to and realize that women were not just welcomed in the NAIITS community, but shaping and forming and fashioning the community we were becoming. Wendy helped me in a significant way as my big sister. I mean, it wasn't a legal adoption, but we adopted one another over the years. I became her bratty little brother, and she became my overbearing big sister at times. But she always held me to task in the way in which I treated women, the way in which I thought about women. She helped me become a better human being with respect to how I looked at women in our community and in the wider world. When I struggled to understand a situation with a woman or with women in general, I'd call her up. Or if she was handy, I'd go and have a cup of coffee with her and say, here's the situation I'm in, what do I do? How do I manage this? Not just in a superficial way and not just in a way to pragmatically deal with someone, but in a way that authentically saw them and respected them. That was Wendy to me in a very real way. And that, in turn, helped shape the NAIITS community. I had the privilege of being the founding chair and director for NAIITS, and to do that effectively over the years required Wendy's presence in my life and in the life of this community.
Narlaiwasten Yinka Dene Daketh, Snachalia Yudagi, Snachalia Behunji, Snachalia Keyo. My name is Sascho, and that's about all I'm going to say. We got to hear from these people. My aunties, my mom, my beautiful aunties here, the reason why most of us are here. And I'm so grateful that I get to sit up here. I don't know why I'm sitting up here with them. But I know most of us are feeling that way as well. Oh, I'm going to ask, where are you from? Tell us your name for those of us that don't know you. And how are you feeling today? Oh, we got to start with Cheryl? Oh, well, actually, a lot of people have been asking me, quite a few people coming up, they've been wanting to know, the people wanting to know, Cheryl, where do you park your broom?
I'll never tell. Howdy, Sherelle Bearsley, Natale Weston, Dumdenisli. My name is Sherelle Bear, and I'm from the beautiful village of Natale Weston First Nation, located west of Prince George in BC. And I am feeling very excited and very honored to be sitting on this panel of women. And I don't know if you noticed, but I almost got in a fight on the stage here, because I had to sit someone down and force them. So we'll talk about that later, but I was like, I will make the biggest scene you've ever seen if you don't sit down right now. I'm not gonna name any names. I won't name any names. Okay, maybe it was all of them. Okay. So yeah, I'm feeling really grateful.
Hi, my name is Sharon and I'm from Australia. So from above North Queensland, a place called Ugar Island. That's where my dad's from. But I was born in Ayr, not in Ayr, A-Y-R. Sometime I am airy. Yeah, what else did you want to know? Yeah, that's where, how I'm feeling. I was feeling a bit jet lagged, but now I'm awake. Yeah.
Hi, that close enough? Right there? I'm frozen. My name is Bev LeBlanc, and I come from Prince Edward Island. And I'm feeling pretty good right now.
So I just spoke and was hoping that that was it. And to my surprise, last night, I found out that I'm already an auntie in this group. So, well, I'm processing how I feel about it. So, yeah, give me time.
Tēnā koutou, ko Hannah Chapman tōku ingoa, he uri ahau o tūwhare toa, Ngāti Kahungunu ki Wairua, te whānau panui, te whakatohea, me Ngai Tirangi hoki. That's on my dad's side. My mum's side, my mum is Irish from County Limerick. No, it's not. That's a lie. County Cork, County Antrim and Dublin. I live in Aotearoa. My family, even though we have all those tribal affiliations, home is with Tū Wharetoa, an iwi of the central North Island. So we are the people of the volcanoes and the lakes and the rivers. So I use that as a bit of an excuse for the anger that was referenced earlier. I come from fire. So yeah, I'm feeling all sorts of things actually. Today's been a bit of an emotional one, an emotional ride, feeling all the feels. I was angry about some of the things that I've heard, inspired, encouraged. Yeah, and it's a huge privilege to be sitting here. I also wasn't sure how I felt about being called an auntie, sitting on the Aunties panel, until I was reminded that I'm an auntie. So, tēnā koutou.
Tansei, Glenite. My name is Holly Forche, and I'm from Fort Mackay First Nation, Northern Alberta. I'm Cree and Dene. Was there a woohoo back there? Cousin. That's awesome. And I'm a cookum. I'm a mother and a cookum. Okay, here's your Cree language lesson. In Cree, we say cookum for grandmother. Can you guys all say cookum? And grandfather is Musham. Okay. Now, if you forget, you go, how do you make mashed potatoes? You cook them and you mush them. So how do I feel about being here? I just kind of walked in the door, and then they told me to get on stage. And I was like, I'm not like this. I'm like, I need a script. I need to prepare. What are we talking about? And they're like, Cheryl is just like, come on, just come up. And so I'm very thankful to be here, and I'm really excited to hear the conversation here and tomorrow as well. And congratulations to my dear friend here. And it's an honor to be a guest in this territory. So thank you.
Anin, Ms. Komanakwain, Indigenous cause. I'm too tired actually to even remember what I just said. So, a feeling, if anybody knows me really well, I only have 4 feelings, and right now I think I've used them all today, so I might be run out. I get to hang.
We'll pass it back down. So, this conference here is on matriarchs and matriarch and women in the community. So I wanted to open it up and ask, what's it like being a matriarch? Mom? Aunties? Please tell me.
Yeah, I want to ask everybody up here, who's the matriarch? And I think we would all go like this. And I don't know that any of us would be comfortable, just using that as a title. It's something that's given. Like yesterday and last year and the year before, when we talked about Wendy Peterson, and we said she is the mother of the journal, NAIITS Journal, and she is a matriarch of NAIITS. And she would have been like, probably like, oh, you guys, let's talk about somebody else or something else, right? Because that's how Wendy was, and very humble. So unlike some of us, okay, me, no, but yeah. So I love the auntie title, but we have to talk about that a little bit too. We have some things to share about the auntie.
Girl, what?
I'm going to let I'm going to go let this mic go this way though, and we'll keep that question going because we want everybody to answer that question as well. Can we change Sherry's tea to coffee, please? Like something extreme. What is the question? How do you feel about being a matriarch? Pretty ballsy question.
I knew that most of the aunties up here, it was a trick question. My aunties, none of them would stand up here and say, I am a matriarch, and it feels great being a matriarch. That is why these women are up here. Well, real question though, is my mom and all my aunties here take care of so many of us. Everyone here, I was obsessed to smudge. Mom was being smudged earlier. It's a way of taking care of others through ceremony, through good words, through presence, through laughter. You take care of so many of us. How do you take care of yourselves? As mentioned earlier from my tita, that Auntie Wendy said, make sure you take time for yourself. How do you recover as well from educating non-Indigenous people and help yourself?
That's a trick question. It's hard because I think for me in the community, because the needs are so great, and sometimes you get guilty if you don't answer the phone or people asking you to support them. But I think my husband takes me out for nice breakfasts and we go near water I think that's a big thing for me. We just he's just as busy as I am, but we do find those times together to just spend time with each other and take to nice places, which is nice. I'm just recently been a great-grandmother, and so we get pictures, FaceTime with my great-granny, so we watch him on the thing every Tuesday, Wednesdays and Thursdays. So that just fills our life, really. That's all we need, something. And I guess that's the reason why we do what we do, is because of these little next generations coming up. And we only got a short time on this earth, and so we try to do what we can when we can. But we understand that we should rest, but sometimes it's very difficult when you working in, we live in community as well as work in community. So, but we get our time and we use it well, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is important. For me, I either bead, sit down and bead, or I read, or Terry takes me out for an ice cream cone. Yeah, we'll share.
Well, Terry's getting ice cream for us later? All right.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, and yeah, I just find, like you were saying, Sharon, that sometimes it gets a little heavy, and then I have to do something. I used to have horses, so that's where I went, but now I have a dog. So he gets to hear all my woes and my things.
Yeah, that advice from Wendy 10 years ago has really helped free me to be vulnerable, even in relationships where the others might think that I am the strong one, and just to allow myself to be vulnerable in that. My family, also being an auntie, is something that I always look forward to. So my nephews, especially my nieces, fall onto categories. The older ones think I'm their older sister, and the younger ones think I'm their second mother. And so that gives me strength. That is my safe space.
Some of the usual things, like just hanging out with my kids, and my brother's kids, because they're cuter than mine now. But the big one is that I have to go home every couple of months or I start to feel unwell. I have to go home and be in our water, in our river, on my land. And sometimes I get there and it's been too long and I can't wait, and I just have to get out of the car on the way, not drive straight to the house. I have to get out and just get in the water. And there's just something about that it makes me whole, which is the strength thing, I think. Yeah, it's not so much I feel stronger and bolder, I just feel more whole.
This is a really big question, and I think that what you've learned probably today, and I feel like that's what's happened here today. Like in Canada, as Indigenous people, we've had 150 years of colonization and unilateral decision making by the federal government that we ended up in a place. So we have historical trauma, we have personal trauma, but despite that, Indigenous women are so strong and resilient. We're so fun, We're so generous, we're kind, and we're successful despite all of that. And I love to amplify those stories because I realize that we can be both. We can be wounded and we can be powerful. We don't have to be like, this is what happened to us and it's so hard. And I think like even this panel, the evidence of this is that there is that beauty in that I don't find it anywhere as strong as Indigenous women, that we are, there's just this beauty. You know, we have teachings that women are sacred beings because we carry life. So women are sacred beings. And even when we talk about our culture, it's always referring to the matriarch, the mother, the maternal. And so there's just that beauty. And so I'm just very, this is, whose idea was this to put us all up here? That's really cool that we're up here. You know, it is a really beautiful piece of this, so.
It may have been my idea and I wasn't supposed to be up here. So, thanks, Cheryl. One of the, actually there's a couple of things that I would say. A while ago, I heard a grandmother that I look up to say that you use your hands for healing to begin with. And so whether it's beading, painting, pottery, music playing, using your hands is a really, it's kind of the first step. Walking the land is another, or the waters. And those are pieces that are really important. As a person of faith, I think many years ago, I was trying to do things all on my own in community and thinking it all depended on me. And I received the words that if I keep doing that, I will burn out because my resources are limited. But the one that I believe in, the one that created me, has endless resources. And so my faith is foundational to always keeping me balanced, believe it or not, Sherelle. And the other one is humor. So I like adventures, I like a good laugh, and I like to laugh at others. So.
I didn't get to answer because I let Sharon go first because I'm nice like that. What? I didn't hear that. Oh, anyway. The hot mics will pick up that.
There's intentionality in that. I'm way over here from her, just saying.
100%. We
legally have to be on the other side. It's in their contracts.
We do. Yes, it's a thing. I think we've been kicked out of an elders gathering 1 or 2 times maybe in the past. Just from the cackling and fun that we have. And that, I love that you said humor, Sherry. That is something, and you hear us, those of you who are new to NAITS, I'm so sorry that this is your inauguration, because you hear the banter between us, and the last couple of days, the humor and the stuff that we say to each other is outrageously funny to us, but it's usually other people are like, what did they say to you? Aren't you hurt? And we're like, no, that was a good one. I'm going to get it back later. Or we'll banter back and they can't believe how mean we are. And we love it. And Native people are never stereotyped as funny. We have all the bad things, Brian Breitcloud, Apache elder, he used to say, our Indigenous people lead the country in both Canada and the US. We lead the country in everything bad. But nobody ever says, oh, Native people, they're really funny, but Native people are. And there's lots of different movies and that you gotta catch up on. You can ask Holly about them because she's a rock star. She's a movie star. And, that display the humor. And we love it. And so, and honestly, if we are picking on you in any way, or if we kind of, picking on you, don't ever feel offended, like, oh, they don't like me, because that's not us. if we pick on you, it means we actually like you. And it's really messed up, but it's true. And if we pick on you really hard, it means we really, really, really like you. And maybe even harder, like might want to marry you, I don't know. But I do have to address what Sherry talked about burnout. Somebody asked me the other day, how do you deal with ministry leadership? And I said, well, and I just answered honestly, I said, well, I burned out and I spent 3 years in bed. And that was one of the ways that I had to see doctors, counselors, somatic counselor, whatever that's called. Psychoanalysis?
I don't think it worked, Cheryl.
100% correct. That's why I'm still seeing them. And so I would highly recommend, thank you for that. I love you so much. But yeah, so I have to encourage all of you, go see a counselor, man. Like, go see a therapist, get a therapist. You're gonna, we carry so much as Indigenous women. One of the things that threw me down and threw me on my face for 3 years was so many deaths. And in the midst of those deaths, I was still having to take care of people. I had to deal with my brothers. I had to be the executor for my brother's will. I had to take his 18-year-old daughter, and she's with me. She stays with me now. And those are tough things to do. Those are really hard things to do. Losing parents, have to do all the, the traditional things for that, the potlatch system and all of that. It's really, really hard. But in the midst of grieving and but we have our community. So when we gather, we have a potlatch, we call it in our language. We have a potlatch. The community comes out and supports us as well. And I love what Holly said, or Hannah said as well about the water. And we do go back to Nadle. We do, every time we do, I call him Nano Bear, my son Bear. He jumps in the river and he'll just be like in heaven. And we just go back to the land, we walk across, and we go to the graveyard, and we visit the ones we visit the ancestors' graves, and we think about the ancestors that are, like Terry always says, the great cloud of witnesses, but we think about them as being very close. But I just really want to encourage everybody, like really lean into not just, the sort of Christian ways of trying to deal with some very deep, dark trauma that we can reinforce if we don't deal with it. And there is healing for trauma. There's lots of different programs. Don't talk to me about it later, though, because I don't want to. Just kidding, but there are lots of different programs, and trauma can be healed. And as Indigenous women, we need to lean into those kinds of healings. And science, I love science, man. I love smart people. God made them, and to help us. So please lean into all of that. And I know that a lot of us, we talk to each other. We'll call each other. We have Zoom calls, and I don't talk to them enough. Every single woman on this panel, I am absolutely in love with all of you. And there's so many ways that we have connected, and you have poured into my life and teased me and loved me and fed me, gave me ice cream. And I'm so grateful for that. And look at the community as well, the NAITS community. All that humor, that's how we deal with some of that deep trauma, is we laugh about some of the darkest things, and we don't make light of them, of course, but we just remember that some of these dark things you can, as in the Native way, there's always going to be somebody at a funeral or somebody at a serious event who's going to, an elder usually, who'll just say something that'll just spark everybody, and everybody will have a murmur, or will make everybody bust out laughing. So there is a lot, and there's lots of places, lots of different people groups who have that kind of humor, obviously, but yeah, so anyway, really, and I've never shared that publicly before, that of my personal struggles, but it was too much grief and too much overwhelm. It's very high anxiety, sort of. I have what do they call that? Hyper vigilance. And I always feel like I'm being chased. You know, I have to do this. I have to go. And that's all trauma responses. So lean into some of that stuff and figure out some of that stuff. Read some books or whatever. Talk to your doctor, because some of that stuff is real, and it's really shitty if you don't deal with it. And not that I didn't deal with it. I was just slammed so many. And all of you know how many deaths our family has gone through, and lots of deaths in everyone's family here. So thank you again for walking alongside of me.
I just say thank you, Cheryl, for sharing about that. And for those that, there is good medicine in therapy, but I will say, just to keep us humble, be careful how much therapy you go to, because you might end up like Cheryl. So.
Awesome.
Speaking of matrilineality and women in community, how do you, in your communities, invite our rainbow relatives into those communities and into womanhood? Our LGBTQ+ relatives. I said rainbow relatives because I love alliteration, so.
Holly, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, no.
Auntie Holly, you want to speak to that?
This is a really interesting conversation because I was just visiting with my friend. I went to her farm yesterday, and she's a doctor in Toronto, and she works with the unhoused. She has a clinic, and she also teaches at the University of Toronto. And we were talking about how we had to deprogram how. I wasn't raised in the church because my mother went to residential school, and so we did not like the church. And I became a Christian when I was 20 in university. And it was great. I don't have to tell you, but being a Christian is really great. What a crazy statement, but anyways. But I really love the word, I really love Jesus, all of that, but I don't always love Christians. Yes. And so there's been a big amen. But I feel like we have been so much in the box, and unless you're in the box, you're not welcome. And we've really excluded our rainbow community. I love that. And because of that, and we were talking about that, and because my friend is very inclusive in her work as a Christian, as a doctor, working with the marginalized, and she's like, do you know that trans people have the highest rate of suicide? And I was like, you know what? God is not only loving, God is love. What is our response supposed to be? We are to love. And that is the bottom line. I'm not going to judge what's happening. I'm not going to. And I feel like I was that person that was judging. I was that person that was like, you have to change. You have to be more what my interpretation of the Bible was. So I don't know if that's you guys are way smarter than me. These guys are all Bible scholars. I don't know what I'm doing up here. Oh, they're not? Okay. Okay, I feel better all of a sudden now. I was singing the Sesame Street song, one of these things just doesn't belong here, one of these things just isn't the same. I thought that was me, but I feel better now about that. But anyways, I don't know, I just feel can we please respond in a better, loving way? Is that kind of the answer you wanted? I like that question, though. That is such a great question.
So because you asked about our own communities, I'll answer specifically from that perspective. So I don't belong to a church or a sort of specific faith community. So where I go to when you ask me that question is to my own hapu, my own people. And in our language, but this is probably the easiest way to explain it, but in our language, there's no word for he or she, it's just ia.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's our languages.
So it's a different question for us. And within our hapu, we are mana wahine. We're the only hapu of Tū Wharetua, of our tribe, so the only, I don't like this word, but sub-tribe within our tribe, that is mana wahine, which means that there is a special acknowledgement of women and reverence of women, but that doesn't collide with any of the things that you might find outside of our own context in terms of who's in, who's out. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't actually know how to answer that question in terms of othering, because it's not the kind of othering that goes on in our hapu.
Thank you, beautiful. So the same, in our culture, linguistically, we don't have the word, we only have one word for the third person. And so we always have a hard time speaking, we mix our his and hers whenever we speak English. But sadly, the perspective of these things in our communities have been deeply influenced by the outsiders. And so the othering has come from that pressure to conform to the outside concepts for this community. And so in my walk with them personally, as we are exploring new ways of knowing, it has given me an opportunity to respectfully ask them to re-examine, where is this othering coming from? Is this really rooted? If there's no language for it, then it may not be. And I am pretty sure it is not. But I also have to respect the pace and the journey that they are in. And so I have my strong convictions about inclusion, but I also have to respect where they are because of the history of incursion and influence that has come into the communities. But I am hopeful because, again, like, it is not in the language.
Sorry, I just want to add a little bit. I do want to say that there are specific male and female roles within Māori society and culture. And we have been talking about these things. There are certain haka, for example, that within our protocol only the men should do. And so then the questions that were coming out, and what we would call a wānanga, like the ongoing dialogue and conversation about this, it came down to physicality. So if you have a womb, you can't do that haka, because there's a whole lot of tikanga and kawa, like our knowledge systems, our protocols that sit behind that. So I just didn't want to neglect that part of our reality as well. Male and female are seen as being in relationship with one another, and it's a balance. It's about the essence of and the functions and roles that we have within that contribute to the whole. So that's another reason why the othering doesn't quite work, because it's about the collective.
I want to say something, obviously.
I would say, from what I've learned within my traditions, are definitely the roles of for men and for women. And when you go into ceremony, you sit separately, and there's different roles and functions in that. And in speaking with my elders, about this rainbow community, those that would identify differently. I was reminded that it wasn't always common in our traditions early on. And that always made me wonder what has changed in all this. And this morning, Andrea Smith talked about the impact of colonization, even on women and on our gender and our sexuality. And I think the impact of colonization really has wreaked havoc in our communities. And as we work towards healing, it is a journey, it's a process. And my elders have said, you know, we accept everybody in this journey. We don't always have it all together. We're learning together. And so never to judge or to condemn or to cast aside somebody, but to walk with, to journey, to love. And so.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I don't care who you love, I'm going to love you. And we've always had the idea, in a lot of First Nations communities, not all, but we have this two-spirit. The word two-spirit is Indigenous, and it's goes back way, way, way back, and it was very common in First Nations communities for someone to be born this way, and they were just accepted. They were thought of as special or magical even, and they had roles in community. They were not rejected. They were not cast out. They were a part of the community, the collective. Another thing, talking about the language, in Dakat, our language, we don't have words for he and she, and so I have an auntie who is in her 80s, my beloved Auntie Agnes, and I was living with her for 3 years while I was working on chief and council as a counselor, not the chief. I would never do that. It's too hard. But I lived with my aunties, so, and she would often, because English is her second language, so she would often, I'd be downstairs, whatever, folding laundry or pretending I knew how to build a fire or whatever in the wood stove, not in the basement. And I'd hear my uncle, oh, where's that Sherelle? They always say Sherelle, which I love. And my auntie would be like, oh, he's downstairs doing laundry. And, you know, she knows I'm a she. She knows I'm she, her, all that kind of stuff. But she just said, he's downstairs. And I would smile, because I've heard this my life, right? My whole life, this is, and then other times there'd be, you know, somebody talking about uncle, and he would say, oh, you know, she went for a walk, about my uncle. And it wasn't that, you know, she just mixed it up, because we don't have those two words. We don't have pronouns in our language and in a lot of Indigenous languages. It's kind of a cool thing. So it's, yeah, and I do think it is an effect of colonization that there is that, even in the language, there had to be this separation and of those genders. And so anyway, it's, and the third thing I wanted to say, just, I'll wrap up, is one of the names for God in the Bible is, put on my Bible, pretend to be a scholar hat. I don't ever call myself an academic. I always say I'm just a storyteller. I'd rather just do that. But one of the names for God is the breasted one. And of course we have the beautiful, beautiful artwork that is represented at that. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't man boobs. Right? So hello, why are we going to talk about that? Well, we don't like to. You know, it's uncomfortable for Christians, very conservative Christians, to talk about that. Whereas Indigenous people, through colonization, we've had to be forced to wrestle with some of those things, where within our languages, within our culture and our way of being, those things have been pushed onto us, whereas they were just very natural before. So.
All right, we'll be wrapping up soon. Do we get time to talk about pretendians? Are we going to tackle that? No, I don't know if we've got time. Okay. So, aunties, what would be a teaching that you would like to pass on to the next generation or people that are listening here as well one that we don't have to ask or give you tobacco for.
Our family's got a song that we always sing that keeps our family together, and it's love is the key in everything we do because Jesus is the source of it all. And it's important that we love ourselves, love God, love ourselves, and love others. You can't go wrong. Whether you're a rainbow person or, or straight or whatever we give things titles. I think if we love, I think you cannot definitely go wrong. And like I said, that's our family theme song that we sing when we come together and gather because, God is the source of it all. Yeah, love.
And I agree with Sharon. Terry and I follow the Jesus way instead of, And what he says is to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and your strength, and to love others as yourself. So for me, anybody that sits at my table is welcome. They're just welcome. And whether I have a cup of tea for them or a piece of toast, they're just welcome.
I feel like that is a Miss Universe kind of question. But anyway, at this point, I believe it's like embracing the gift of experiencing Creator, experiencing Jesus, experiencing yourself in the midst of the unknown, in the midst of the non-familiar. And that is what I have been enjoying here in NAIITS, and I think that it is something that I would like to encourage others to do as well.
I'm going to be way less succinct. Two things. One is I decided maybe, a long time ago, that if God felt that it was good to make me Māori and Irish, but to locate me in Aotearoa, and for me to be of that land, then there's something about that that is a reflection of who he is as creator. And so I have pursued my Māoriness as a pursuit of my creator. And to use the words of Uncle Monty Ohia, who was one of the co-founders of the WCGIP, he would always say, don't just be Māori, be an excellent Māori. So I want to be an excellent Māori. The second one is, as part of that pursuit and learning our stories, I learned about one of my ancestors, one of my tipuna, and her name is Henera Wamua. And she was the daughter of our chief. And we have these beings called taniwha that are kind of like beasts. And the taniwha Ōwhiao had been attacking people. And so the hapu gathered and decided a plan for how they were going to address Ōwhiao. And the decision was made that someone would be used as bait to lure Ōwhiao out of his cave so that he could be captured. And it was decided that because Henera Wamua was the puhi, she was the high-born daughter, that she would be the most appropriate lure, bait. And so she agreed to do that. And her father explained to her, because Ōwhiao lived in a little lake, a puna spring, he said, when you get close, you'll see bubbles start to appear on the surface as Ōwhiao begins to surface. And so prepare yourself. But know that all of your family, all of the hapu will be there on the sides where Ōwhiao can't see, and they'll be ready to respond. You won't be in danger. And that's what happened. Ōwhiao came, she began to rise to the surface. She saw the bubbles rising. And she held her ground to face the taniwha that was attacking her people. And right at the moment when Ōwhiao surfaced and came out of the water, the family and the hapu members and the men, they threw ropes around him. They used ropes and they used ko, which are digging sticks for the garden. to contain the taniwha. So the lesson in that for me, which is what my cousin spoke over me as I moved into leadership roles, he said, when you face the taniwha, the things that are attacking our people and that are taking out our people, you face them, and you face it with courage, you face it with grace and humility, knowing that we're right there beside you. We're ready to contain the taniwha. Orfeo wasn't eliminated. It was about containing him. And they did it with things of agriculture, the things that brought life and stimulated, plants, the things that would sustain us as a hapu. They used those things to contain the taniwha. And so I share that with you because that is one of those stories that I will hold for the rest of my life. That is how I be an excellent Māori. I be like my tipuna hene rauama.
You follow that up.
Wow. So I have two businesses. I do Indigenous awareness training, and I've been doing that for about 18 years across Canada, into the States, even into Europe. And I tell, the history of Indigenous people and how to move forward. And we talk about reconciliation, and I have about 70 to 100 speaking engagements a year. And then I'm also a film producer. So I worked back in the day in movies where I was like, I started on a show called North of 60. I was like background walking around Lynx River. And then I became an actor, and then I became a stunt person. And then I started working behind the camera, producing and organizing, especially Native cowboys for these big battles. When a horse wrangler, yeah, like where the cavalry kills the Indians, like that, those ones. And I really enjoyed behind the camera. And so I started a production company, starting with my mom's residential school story, and I started that actually in 2020, and we've done about 43 different film projects since then. But all that to say, I'm a storyteller, and I've worked in that capacity for many years. And I find that, honestly, most Canadians are exactly like you guys. They're leaning into this conversation. Like, I look out on this audience right now, and you're leaning in. You want to learn. And I'm so proud of you for that. And I think that, we should be really proud of ourselves as Canadians for the relationship that we want to do. Yes, there's racism, but I feel like we've turned a corner. And what gives me hope is this. We do have work to do, but this is what gives me hope. And I think that, I always tell my granddaughters, I think the most important thing is just keep your heart soft. There's a lot of chaos. There's lots of things. We go through hard times, like Sherelle was saying, definitely, but, if we have a soft heart to one another, I think that is God. That is Jesus on the earth. Just keep your heart soft. And I'm really deeply honored to be here and be on the stage with this beautiful people. Thank you.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Oh my gosh. Excuse me, talking to your elder there, son.
All your wisdom, Cheryl, we can condense in 1 minute, trust me.
I need a couple of seconds. Okay, continue to decolonize. Oh, and also I wanted to say thank you to the ladies who are in in the audience here today and on screen watching and are in your homes and participating, who are also matriarchs and who are also powerful women. There are so many, I just see so many of you and I'm like, I'm gonna pull you up on the stage. And if we did that, because we have so many powerhouses and we have, you know, like dear Patty, who I called her a snowplow, and she's dealing with some of the white patriarchy in certain situations. And I called her a snowplow, but she's not just snowplowing snow, she's like taking on a glacier. And so we have some strong, I'm getting chills just thinking about how many of you I would love to see up here. But we have limited time, limited all of that kind of stuff, so we were just like, but I would like to say, please, 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 let's continue to decolonize. Let us as Indigenous writers, artists, thinkers, scholars, pastors, all of the things that we do in these spaces, continue to decolonize our Bible, continue to decolonize the church, continue to decolonize educational systems, the health system. All of those things need to be decolonized. And that word decolonize kind of freaks everybody out, because it's like, oh no, are you guys going to do to us what we did to you? And it's like, oh, we wish. No, just kidding. Just kidding. The answer actually to that is, here's what decolonization means to me. It means listening to another story and changing your mind about something. It's like the sun coming out from behind a cloud and you're wearing a jacket and maybe a couple of jackets and a scarf, and then you just begin to warm up. And so you take off your scarf and you put it aside, and you take off your jacket and you put it aside. And those are some of the things. That sun is in this new thing that's coming at you. It's in this new day. And some of these things we need to set aside. Some of these things that just don't belong in society anymore, that are hurting people of color, not just Indigenous people. And in the church is one of the most dangerous places for people of color. You know, the black version of the Bible that was, or the slave version of the Bible, which is deadly, right? The oppressiveness that's in certain versions of the Bible that was intentionally put there to hold people down, in people of color, not just. So we have to continue to fight that and find ourselves in the Bible. Where are we in the Bible? And look at Jesus as perhaps an insurrectionist, as he should have been. And, you know, up against Bar Abbas, who is actually Barabbas, is son of Abba. Bar means son, Abba is father. So do you want Jesus, the king of the Jews, or do you want the son of God, the son of the Father? Like those kind of things where we don't see Jesus as, we don't want to think about Jesus as an insurrectionist. We want him to be all peaceful and, you know, giving us pieces of bread. But I like to think of Jesus as this kind of muscular carpenter kind of guy who's very brown-skinned and who's going to chuck some tables over. That's not little weak white Jesus. You know, that's not no wispy, blonde-haired, blue-eyed weirdo. So let's see ourselves in the Bible, and there's some ass-kicking that happens in there. And I think that we need to do that in a lot of these places where we still find ourselves maybe not unwelcome. Sometimes we are unwelcomed, but we find ourselves not believed or not listened to. And so we need to break down. We have a lot of, as Holly said, we have a lot of work to do. And I'm grateful for all of these ladies who have kicked my ass a lot of times too, so helped me out. Not enough. That's my son.
That was actually good, Cheryl. I'm surprised. So.
Tombstone. There we go. Actually good.
That was actually good. There we go. So, today we began with the strengths of Hagar. And we heard stories of women that have endured horrific trauma and have been resilient through it. And I think of the 7 women on the stage, myself included in that. And we have often been called strong. You know, we heard about the angry Maori woman or the angry Anishinaabe. And that's often been applied to us, and we've had to be strong. We've had to be resilient. And I think my hope and prayer for generations to come is that they no longer have to be that, but that they can walk in grace. Because what I see is beautiful, grace-filled women and men that are Indigenous, that have experienced all kinds of things. And in my work with churches, I often hear the response that Indigenous people are so welcoming, so gracious. And that's my prayer, is that we will continue to be that, because that is how we make kin. That is how we change the relationship going forward. And so that would be my hope, is that we walk in that grace and that fills our lives. All right, I'm the boss. Listen, I think it might take one woman to keep, well, actually more than one woman to keep Sherelle on her place, but we'll have fun doing it. I would like to say, I don't know if you want to give thanks to these lovely ladies for doing their little thing.
Absolutely. Can we get a round of applause for these beautiful women up here? Nachalia Alou.
It has been a very rich and full day, and we have experienced all kinds of emotions. Our brains have been filled, our hearts have been enriched, and our bellies have been fed. And as we go this evening, I know that there are some that would like to smudge, and so Adrian is here if he would. He'd be available to smudge. Dave is somewhere around. If anybody wants to smudge with Dave, I will bring out my smudging stuff if anybody wants to smudge. Before we go, however, I do want to recognize, as females, we are sometimes we are the center of community. I think that was one of the quotes. We are the heart of community. And as we do that, we want to make sure that everyone is loved and respected, and we treasure them well. And we have a person we refer to as our elder liaison. And we love and respect Adrian, and it's his birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Adrian. Happy birthday to you. We are thankful for you in your life, Adrian. Thank you, Cheryl. On that note, I hope you have a wonderful rest this evening, and we will see you tomorrow morning at 8:30, and we have a special guest coming for music. Apologies, we're going to do we're retiring the Eagle staff. My apologies, I forgot that.